Hey guys, so we are at the LA Canyons today in a McLaren P1 for a bit of a drive and a chat. Wanted to talk about a topic that came up last night in our live stream that I thought was worthy of its own video. We talked about it quite extensively, but it's something that I think would be a good thing to have a bit of a chat with you guys about, and I'd really be keen to hear your thoughts on this in the comments as well. Get past this M3 here, or M4 rather, through the middle. Whoa, watch the 86. So, this is something that is definitely not a new problem or a new, I guess, concern in the sim racing space, but it's definitely something that's been exacerbated in the last probably 12 months since the whole COVID thing happened, and just the general craziness around that and the influx of new people to the sim racing scene in general. So we see a lot of chatter about gear and the impact that that has on performance. And we see a lot of comparisons as well, people saying it's unfair that you get multiple people in the same race using different types of gear. And we've proven quite a number of times throughout various videos that beyond a certain point at least, as long as you're prioritizing the right things with your gear choices, the higher end gear doesn't really make a massive difference to performance overall. And that's kind of validated when you look at esports competitions where they are using various different types of gear. You can see they're all within a couple of hundred, sometimes even thousands of each other. So I think that validates that argument pretty well, and we do have a bunch of videos on the channel where we've discussed this in more detail if you want to check those out, that sort of explain and sort of help you to prioritize gear. But what I wanted to talk about today is more the human element, the, I guess, approach that different people have to sim racing, and what it means when you throw a bunch of different people with different approaches all into the same lobby together, because obviously that is one of the things that is fundamentally different to sim racing compared to, or fundamentally different about sim racing compared to real life racing. In the real world, generally speaking at least, you'll have mostly people there for the same reasons. People are there to compete, they're there to be as competitive as they possibly can. They've got an expensive car that they don't want to damage as well. They've got sponsors to keep happy, all those kinds of elements that are factors in the real world that aren't necessarily factors in the sim racing world. And that's not to say that there aren't people, obviously, that are very, very competitive and focused on the competitive element of sim racing, but more so there are people that are just doing sim racing as a way to have a bit of fun, a way to relax and unwind, and I guess as a form of escapism to an extent. Now, I think for most of us, especially myself, or definitely myself, I kind of fit in on both ends of the spectrum. Sometimes I like to put in a bunch of effort and really sort of try to hone my skills and be the best driver that I can possibly be and put a lot of effort in, and we've seen that recently through the Porsche Esports All-Stars racing. I've really been putting in a lot of effort, a lot of practice time there, and although I'm not the fastest driver by any means, I'm seeing the improvement, and I'm sort of enjoying that aspect and enjoying taking you guys along for that journey as well. And some of the other guys that are participating in that have also been putting in equally as much practice, or some even more practice than I am, but some of them are just sort of jumping in and having fun and enjoying it. And there's, both of those things are perfectly fine, and that's what we see in normal sim racing as well. If you jump into a lobby, some people have done a ton of practice, others won't have, but both of those positions are perfectly valid, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with just wanting to have a bit of fun. But when you mix the two together, that's when you get this big problem, or big issue that I think does need to be spoken about, because I don't really see an obvious solution to this. I can't really see any way that we can do away with that. And the last thing that I would want to do is sort of suggest that we create some sort of an elitist thing where only people that are willing to put in the time are welcome in sim racing. And I've seen that suggested a few times in a couple of Facebook groups. You're not welcome here unless you're hardcore. And the reality is that for the majority of people, they just want to have fun. They just want something that they can jump in, and if it becomes too serious, it kind of puts them off. And I mean, that's also validated by the fact that we've seen recently a lot of sim titles kind of move away from dabbling in the simulation side and move back towards the sort of instant gratification style of gameplay that, obviously is appealing to a wider audience. We've seen it with Project Cars 3 recently. That was a massive step backwards in terms of simulation, but still a very successful game in its own right. And then from what I've seen as well, we're expecting to see a similar kind of thing happening with Gran Turismo, which I know is disappointing to a lot of people, but again, it just validates the fact that for the masses, they want that instant gratification. So again, we come into that problem where you throw both those sides in the lobby together and it's going to be chaos. And to use these all-star races as an example, we've seen instances where somebody's jumped into the race just wanting to have fun and just be entertaining, and they've ended up causing an incident, not necessarily intentionally, but you could say somewhat recklessly against somebody who's been putting in a bunch of effort. The audience has been taken along for that ride as well. And so people get really fired up in the comments. The streamer gets quite, not aggressive, but quite frustrated as well, which is perfectly understandable. And I think we've all been there. We've all experienced that frustration. But, it can create all sorts of problems for the community. And, this is something that applies to everybody, not just streamers and content creators. We've all been in that position where we've been incredibly frustrated by somebody that just sort of didn't respect the reasons why we were in the lobby in the first place. And I think we've probably all been on the other side of that as well, where we've probably ruined somebody's race and they've been more upset about it than we perhaps thought they should have been because we didn't really appreciate it from their perspective. So I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think about this? What do you think that we can do about it without creating a situation where we're sort of, I guess, alienating people and locking them out, or making it feel like there's this this barrier that you have to be at a certain standard, or you have to have a certain level of commitment to be allowed to participate. Now, obviously, a lot of titles do have, matchmaking and ranking systems that do sort of facilitate at least putting you in lobbies with other people that are at a similar skill level, but it still doesn't deal with that human element of, potentially you're a really skilled driver that does normally do a lot of practice, but you just have a spare half an hour and you just want to jump in and have some fun. So you're not at that same level of commitment for that particular race. And that is always going to creep into these situations. So I don't have a solution for it, but I thought it would be a good idea to sort of have a bit of a chat about it at least and get some of your ideas on what you think. What are some of the ways that not only we as a community can try to improve this, but also what do you think game developers could do to maybe create better systems that are able to sort of facilitate people jumping in and having a bit of fun and doing it in an environment where it's not going to ruin other people's races. I think for me, probably the obvious solution, although it's not going to fix the problem entirely, is to just, I guess, raise awareness of the fact that we do need to be more respectful to each other in general and be more mindful of the fact that some of us are there just to have fun. And, if you're in a race that you're taking really seriously, maybe it would pay to just be a little bit more cautious and not go for that move, knowing that the person in front of you might not be there for the same reason. I know that I drive very differently in normal online lobbies and even ranked iRacing races to what I do in something like a league race, where I know that people are there because they want to perform and they tend to behave in a slightly more predictable manner. So there's that, obviously, but again, I think for the other side, people, if you are just jumping into a lobby and wanting to have a bit of fun, you do need to be mindful of the fact that that guy that you're about to make a move on, as I make a move on a F40 there, maybe he's been practicing all week. Maybe he's, trying to record a video for his YouTube channel. Or maybe he just wants to have a nice, clean race. Maybe he's focusing on his I rating or his safety rating. Maybe he's going for that win. Maybe he's going for that championship and he's been practicing all week to get that. And then you go and take a dive on him, take him out of the race, and that's his one shot for the week. And literally, that one move that you made may have completely wiped out 10, 15 hours of practice during that week. And I was chatting to my VRS driving coach this week about it, and he actually said to me, it's not abnormal for the guys, practicing at the top level for these esports competitions to be putting in upwards of 10, sometimes 20 hours a week of practice for that one race. So you can imagine just how frustrating it is when something happens and they get taken out. Now, thankfully, in that kind of scenario, generally everybody's there for the same reason, so it's not so much of a problem. But, again, trying to jump into a lobby, you just don't want to see that kind of thing happening. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. How can we, as a community, help to improve this situation? How can we be more mindful in general? And how can we make sim racing, or keep sim racing nice and accessible and fun for the people that just want to dive in and have a bit of mindless fun, a bit of mindless entertainment, and a bit of instant gratification, but also still keep it a nice, clean environment for those who do want to take it up that extra notch and be more competitive. And I guess, make it fun, keep it as fun as possible for everybody. So let me know what you think. We'll keep this video relatively short and sweet, but looking forward to hearing from you guys. And yeah, I'll see you again soon. Bye.